welcome back to another episode of the Practice Odyssey. I'm Alex.
And Jen.
The Practice Odyssey is your one-stop podcast to listen to how we have practiced through a method or app for 2 weeks on our flutes, and we report back to you, our listeners, as to how it affected our lives. Are we better musicians? Are we better practicers in general? I'm currently over here in Germany, and it is super sunny today, and I am loving it. How is it where you are, Jen? Where are you?
I'm stuck in my house. Cambodia has finally joined the rest of the world. We are currently, we're not officially in a lockdown. It's basically the way it works here is everyone is trusted to use their common sense. So I am not going out as much as I normally would because there is COVID in the streets. But yeah, it's good. I'm kind of getting a little bit. I've been in the house for a week now, so now I'm getting a little bit cray-cray now. But anyway, it's fine. Anyway, how have you been going, Alex?
I've been doing great. Thanks for asking. We've been having a lot. So the first part of this month, it was really snowy, and now it is just sunshine in Germany. So nice. Oh my gosh. We've had basically straight sun for the last 2 weeks, and I am here for it. It makes practicing and being staying inside a lot easier. Just going a little crazy. I'm glad we're at this lockdown together, but and it gave me a lot of time to really delve into this this book we've been practicing for the last 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it was a good book for the last 2 weeks. I think we can just.
It was an excellent book I dabbled in
busy
it.
Weeks.
Mm-hmm. It was a dabbling book. I dabbled.
It was definitely a dabbling book.
Which is good because I do dabble in the alto flute. I have to say I'm not a very, committed alto flute player. I really would like to. It's a very soothing instrument. But yes.
You play it so well too. Your Toru Takemitsu was gorgeous.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad
when you did that with the guitarist in Adelaide.
Wow. Yeah. He was great.
It was like being on the ocean.
It's such a beautiful piece. Oh my gosh. If you haven't played or heard this piece by Toru Takemitsu, it's called Towards the Sea. Beautiful. There's various versions. There's various versions. I think you can have alto flute and guitar, but I think there's a version with, I want to say glockenspiel, but that could be wrong. Or is it vibraphone?
Ooh.
One of the percussion instruments, and then there's also another version for harp. So... yeah,
the harp would be really nice.
Yeah, that would be lush as well. Anyway, so beautiful piece, absolutely beautiful piece. If you haven't heard it, find a recording. It's amazing. And if you haven't played it, put it in your next program. It's so good. Anyway,
we would recommend it for
I'm a fan.
the more advanced flutist. It is not the easiest piece to learn. I played it a little bit with Guy up in Berlin, and it was definitely, you hear this piece and it sounds very relaxing and soothing, and it's titled Toward the Sea, so you think it's all calming, but then you look at the music, and like any piece of French impressionism or expressionism, depending on who you're talking to, yes, it's a doozy. It sounds willy-nilly. No, it sounds very free and free form, but it is very precise, and the smallest things line up, and you have to hit them. So, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does take a fair amount of rehearsal, to be fair, and you need a really good guitarist, which thankfully both of us were working with.
Yes,
two very amazing lucky guitarists. Yes,
this is 100% true.
Yeah, 100% true. Anyway, Towards the Sea. We got seriously sidetracked. I'm sorry. Okay.
We did.
Right. What are we actually working on? What did we work on the past fortnight?
We worked on the book An Artist's Guide to Alto and Bass Flute by Irene Maddox.
Yes.
And Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, it's alto flute. There's not a huge amount out there for alto flute technical work, but Irene Maddox has produced one, a technical book for bass flute and for alto flute, and it doesn't surprise me that she has, because when I looked up her biography, which was actually quite hard to find, So the biography I found, it's taken from a book she wrote called Campfire Songs. As I said, I struggled to find a biography or webpage for her, so I've taken it from here. It says here, Irene Maddox, she taught flute in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a private studio, as well as on the staff of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and Queens College. She's performed as a soloist in both the United States and Europe with symphony orchestras, as part of chamber groups, and also as part of a flute guitar duo. She's done a huge amount of things. She's sung, taught music in public schools, been a church accompanist, played professionally in orchestras and on Broadway. She often performs with organist Mark Anderson as the Anderson-Maddox duo, who record exclusively for international artists, United States, and for Philips in Europe. She is a native of Texas and went to university there. However, she also went to Europe and studied with Jean-Pierre Rampal. She's a founder of the Charlotte Flute Association and an officer of the National Flute Association. She co-founded the Charlotte Flute Choir, which is an all-flute group that played everything from classical to calypso. And it's pretty good because in 1985 they went to the World Championship in Ireland where they won.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. The best.
Is there still a world championship for flute choirs?
I think we should look into that, and I think we should try and go.
It's in Ireland. Let's go. It sounds gorgeous.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a bit about Maddox. Anyway.
Jen, do you want to tell us anything about how the book is structured?
Okay, so it's titled An Artist's Guide to Alto and Bass Flute. It's got a table of contents, and that's all it's got. Basically, we have a diagram of the alto and bass flute, fingering charts, then how they're scored, because the alto is a transposing flute. And then we've got exercises for tone, scales, articulation exercises, exercises for tonal balance, and then musical excerpts. And this is really all that is given to us in terms of the book. Alex.
Yeah. Week 1. It's very to the point. This book does not play around with lots of beautiful language and analogies and metaphors. It is very to the point. And so I spent the first week kind of looking through her exercises, which are listed in her intro. After the diagrams of kind of how to like start your practice on the alto flute. Jen and I, we both performed on the alto flute, so we're quite proficient already on it. So this was a refreshing book. I felt like it was being taught. It was being told. The book was talking to me. How would I say this? The book, it felt like I was being taught. And I was a little younger than I am currently. So she breaks down the points very well and covers all of the basics. Well, not all the basics. It's about, how many pages? 2 pages long. So 2 pages long. But she kind of goes over different little things to practice and the order in which you should practice them. And once you've mastered certain steps, she says, okay, once you have mastered section blah, then you can move on to section blah, blah. So she's very concise about all of that. I was a little... So to be quite honest, to get through her warm-up that was suggested, it took me about 20 minutes, 30. It did not take me very long. It's quite short. It's... Yeah, but we'll get to more about who it might be good for in our verdict. But yeah, I mean, you can probably already guess. But yeah, so it didn't take too long to get through the warm-up. And then it said online when we were looking at this book to perform that it also includes some like little excerpts and that you can practice with. So I was quite excited about that. However, they were not actual flute excerpts. Well, so if you qualify an excerpt as a piece of music that has been condensed, this is what it was. It was not, however, what I thought would be, which is normally assumed that is an orchestral excerpt, which is usually something that you play for auditions, or it's a very famous part that is written specifically for your instrument.
Yeah.
So for someone like me who's so I think this would be really good for somebody who is, beginning, because she uses a lot of little fun songs in here, like such as Carmen, and some themes on Bizet. She's done the Elegy and a couple of other really nice ones. But for someone who has played all of these on the regular flute and knows how the pitch is supposed to sound, and then playing them on the alto flute, it was really, it really bugged me. I could see why she did it, though, because it would be really good for, beginners who know maybe the fingerings for these songs already, and then you can just transition them quite easily onto the alto flute because they don't have to worry about the fingering aspect. But when you spend, a lot of time of your day transposing so that your internal pitch is quite good, and then you have to switch over, and it's like these things that are normally played on another one. I mean, it's not hard. It just really did my head in. I understand why she did it. I just did not like it very much. But what I did like is, this is the first time I think we've seen in a book, Jen, that anyone has used hand stretching exercises in a book and said, you need to stretch your hands because this is a big flute. Because it's quite a big flute. So I thought that was really cool. As we've mentioned before, I'm a yoga enthusiast. I'm by no means a professional, but I do believe in the soothing art of stretching all of my muscles as much as possible so I do not hold tension in my body.
Very true.
Fun. But yeah, so I was really surprised I was pleasantly surprised to see hand stretching exercises in a book. Normally, whenever we read a book, they may mention it, like, alongside, don't forget to do your fitness aspect of life, consult, and they usually say something along the lines of consult somebody or look into this. But she actually says, here are some hand exercises. So, and I always wondered if that was because of like legal reasons that nobody's ever stated it in a book before, kind of like the same reason that we see before, fitness workouts, like consult your doctor before completing this exercise. We do not know you. How can we tell you this is a good fit for your body? But yeah, hopefully these were just, they weren't so crazy. They were really nice hand exercises, but yeah. And I would have to say the length of my practice with this book every day when I practiced it was just around 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It was quite a breezy read for me. So, which is probably, it was good. But yeah. Anyways, Jen, how was your first week with Miss Maddox?
Okay, well, as per usual, I kind of just jumped in with both feet. Yes, I reached the table of contents and I went, okay. And then I got to the diagram and I was like, okay, that's the diagram of the flute. Okay, these are the keys, which means this seems pretty straightforward. Then I got to the diagram of all the fingerings for the alto flute and I tried them out. Some of them sound exactly the same as the standard concert flute fingering does on my alto flute. And I don't know why she particularly has gone for these ones, whether this is a standard technique on the alto flute or it just works better for tuning on particular alto flutes. And there were some which just physically didn't really sit under my fingers very well. For example, she has the B flat or the A sharp fingerings where it's a normal high B flat. So you've got your, you're playing like a high F with the first trill finger down. But then she also wants you to put down your, she also wants you to put down the 5 and the 6. So use the C finger, finger a low C for it. And it just, it was way harder to play because you have to stretch so much further because your fingers on the trill, your middle finger's on the trill key, and then you got to stretch down to the low C. And it didn't make any difference to the sound on my alto flute. So Yeah, there were a few fingerings which I tried. And then she had really cool information on the alto flute and also how to score for alto flute. And she transposes each of the keys. And then her info page, which was basically the whole of page 5, which had the hand stretching exercises you mentioned. But then it had like all of the instructions for how to use the exercises in the book. And it's just this condensed paragraph of text, which I kind of worked my way through. And this was in the end, I kind of gave up, like, because I had to, it sounds like such a wussy complaint, but I just got really sick of having to flip the pages backwards and forth. So I ended up just writing the notes on top of the page where the exercise is on, which, in my opinion, perhaps the instructions could have been, that's where they could have been, instead of all being on the same page, all in one paragraph flowing into each other. But anyway, that's my own particular bugbear, and that's all right. And then, but like, there were some nice little exercises. I really liked the tone centering one. I liked her little, so I worked on that for the first week. I was, because for me, the alto flute, the middle register is the really tough nut to crack in terms of tone, because the low register comes out really beautifully. Right. The high register sounds pretty funky, but it generally comes out okay. The middle register for me is where the cracks can happen the most easily. So I liked especially the first exercise, and starting by playing pianissimo, because it means that you need to get your embouchure exactly right to get those G's to just come out perfectly with these like tone exercises. And then I liked how she told you to increase the dynamic so that you could see how loud you can get without cracking, so pushing to the limits of your playing. So I really liked that first exercise. That was quite fun. And then I got a little bit confused about where to go, because I think that I was supposed to go to exercise 2 for octaves, so I would go to exercise 2. Then I started getting lost, because then all of a sudden we were jumping to exercise 6. And then I didn't know if I was supposed to go to exercise 6 or whether I was supposed to go to... But then I knew that exercise 7 was only once I'd mastered exercise 2 in 6. But then I was like, what happens to 3? And then so I would go back to 3. And then 4. So basically, I think you're getting the impression that it was a little bit of a kushmozzle with my practicing. So basically, I just kind of played through everything every day, all those exercises. Basically, I just stuck to the exercises for the first week. And I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to transpose exercises 4, 5, and 6, which were like articulation and octaves, yeah. I was a bit confused, Alex, but I gave it a whirl. My first week was figuring out the exercises and particularly what she wanted from each one. Some were clearer than others, what I was aiming for with this. There we go. That
sounds good. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound great, but like, I mean, like, it sounds like you struggled with it, but like, it was.
Well, it was more the format and the structure I struggled with, but the exercises themselves I found good, and I found my middle register got a lot more solid in terms of how loud I could get without it cracking, and also number 2, which dealt in octaves. Again, like, one of the biggest bugbears on alto flute is tuning, of course. So these octaves were like really great boot camp for intonation. So I really enjoyed number 1 and 2 particularly. That was really great. And then I was confused about number 3. Am I supposed to play it legato?
I don't know if this helps, but in America, legato is not slurred. Often it's just like a very, very long articulation. So instead of, like standard articulation, it's being like da 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 da. Sounding, and then like staccato is just like really short, and then legato is just like la 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 la. So or
like so kind of more like piano legato.
Exactly. So we use when we say legato in America, that's usually what it pertains to. So I don't know if that helps. Because I think that's what I took away from exercise 3 is that we're supposed to play it legato. So I said, okay, so basically you want to hear the full sonority of the tone on every note. So, which was
so I
fun,
would
like
slur that all. Yeah. Okay, to get that.
And in fairness, legato, I think in the rest of the world is slurred. So America.
I don't know. Anyway, so week one in summary was confusion but appreciation. Confused appreciation. There we go. I'll leave it at that. Okay. That was my first week. I was confused appreciation, but I got there in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so my second week, it's been very stressful over here in Germany, despite the fact that I'm not going many places. I realized today that I think it's now been officially a year since I've seen the ocean, and that makes me really sad. But I'm very grateful that I'm here. It's just, growing up and living on the ocean, like near the ocean. And anyways, so anyways, despite being in a room most of the time, it's been really crazy and hectic. But yes, so in second week, I took a leaf out of your book, Jen, to try and help calm myself down a little bit and help me just kind of remain focused. And to do that, I just took the book and I did a lot of flute karaoke.
Yeah.
I did make it a little trickier because, as I mentioned, just instead of of course there are technical aspects to flute karaoke, but as I mentioned in week one, a lot of this is transposed, or not transposed. It's not transposed. It's just written in the key for a C flute instead of the alto flute, which is in G. So, which for any non-musicians who are listening, that just means that when normally you would play an instrument on a C instrument, it's exactly the sound that comes out is the same as the name of the fingering you're putting down, but on the alto flute, it is not. So when you see a C on the alto flute and you play a C with your fingers, then a G is blown out of your flute. So I just kind of had a little fun. She puts in a whole bunch of arias from operas such as Madame Butterfly and Carmen, like I said earlier, and the Bluebells of Scotland. And so I just I did the beginning, the intro, the warm-up doesn't take too long to go through, as mentioned before, and she covers different aspects, double tonguing as well. I didn't really touch on that before, but there is aspects of articulation in here as well, just kind of overlaid onto a scale. And so I would do usually an intro of that followed by some flute karaoke, and it was a week for my flute to really just act as a healing agent for me. Yeah. So when I was really stressed, I would just go play my flute. It would make me very happy. But also always with, correct fundamentals and everything. So, and other than that, it didn't really take me too long. That's basically what I did for week 2. There are only 16 pages in this book. So
yes, it is short and sweet. Agreed.
As compared to maybe some more that we're going to be doing this season.
I know. Hysterical laughter cue. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was my week 2. Just using the book as a calming method for myself. So, Jen, how was your week 2? What did you get up to?
My week 2, well, because I had conquered the tone exercises of 1 and 6 previously, I moved on to number 7, which again was very useful in terms of intonation, because basically it's an exercise in the fifths and the octaves of a note, and it goes up in semitones. So it really works on your intonation, which again was very nice, and also throughout the entire range of the alto flute. So again, great, because it tends to go horrendously sharp in the high register, horrendously sharp, and then down in the low register, then you're flat. So again, as I say, the much. What is it with it? Well, it's just the flute. I feel just like all flutes. This is the bane, is the intonation. I guess that's true for most instruments, but anyway, it seems to be a particular focus on for alto and piccolo and.
Well, because you've been training, on because it's a wind instrument, and then you're changing the size of the tube in which you blow the wind. So therefore, I guess the harmonics don't change that much, if at all. Harmonic experts come at me.
Number 7, again, great intonation. Then I got into all of the repertoire she gives. I guess the fun part was trying to figure out why she'd chosen these particular songs in particular. I said that 3 times. Why in particular she chose these particular songs to put in this book, because I'm guessing there's got to be a method behind the madness. That's one conclusion I came to, is they were all pretty diatonic, so I guess you could tell when the intonation was going a bit funky. Which I'm guessing is why. And also a lot of lyrical passages and songs chosen jumping in and out of this middle register, which again, as I mentioned, is a bit of a bugbear to get without cracking. And then, of course, putting in Scheherazade and Bizet, you've got a lot of very quick and clean articulation required, which again is pretty heinous to do on the alto flute because it's bigger. So your air and the way the sound comes out is pretty similar to playing the low register and the flute. But I was a bit bummed, like you said, that there wasn't any kind of beautiful solos written specifically for the alto flute. I guess there's not a huge amount which jump to my... And I mean, all the ones which are really big in the orchestral repertoire tend to be pretty wild, like pretty Stravinsky and
Ravel.
Ravel. Although they're pretty, but they're just really, really short. Although some of the fast bits are pretty heinous, and also again not very diatonic. So I can understand why she didn't put any particularly alto flutey pieces in there.
Anyways, but on that wonderful golden note, Jen, it sounds like we might be coming to verdict territory.
Verdict territory. I really liked this book as an entry-level alto flute book. It gives you really accessible exercises to start off in the alto flute and hits all the major problems, which is the tone, the cracking in the middle register, and the intonation. All of these things get covered, and the articulation problems all get covered in this book. And so I liked how concise it was. My main problem with it was the formatting. I found it quite confusing. Hence why I cracked and wrote all the instructions on the top of my page for each of the exercises. But I mean, that's me being really picky and a little bit precious. Yeah, so I think all in all, I think I'm going to keep exercises to just kind of warm up on before I have to play the alto flute in a gig or something else.
Awesome.
That's my very rambly verdict. Okay, Alex, what was your verdict?
Okay, my verdict. I have a lot that agrees with your verdict. I think that this book approaches alto flute very well for someone who's worked with a lot of flute choirs. Now that you've told me, I feel like this week we've reversed roles, Jen. I have to say, because usually I do a little bit of research into the person and, kind of break it down. And I feel like you take a more organic approach, okay, here's the book. Let's see what they say, and kind of work on it and go from there and have a little fun too. And it's so nice. And that's totally what I did this week. I did not look at her at all online. I think I did one little initial Google search, was oh, okay, there's not too much. Maybe she's older. And there was something happened and she wasn't around when the internet was booming or something. And so, so I didn't do much after that. And then I just was like, I don't like this section. I'm just not, like, I'll play through it. I'll figure out the things, but I didn't really, like, I didn't let it stress me out as much as normal. I think because other things in my life were stressing me out a little more than normal. But I feel like you did all of this research this time. And you were being so good. You're like, okay, I waited, and then I did exercise 6. When of course you could have just jumped into exercises 6. Her harder exercises in this book.
There is literally no order. So yes, you really could.
Yeah. So just to say, I love that we've kind of swapped places this week. But yeah, so I think. Yeah, so I think this book is definitely it was written by somebody who has experience with flute choirs, and maybe, with people who are not familiar with how flute choirs usually happen is you get like 10 or 20 flutists in a room. You've got these scores that are written for flute, piccolo, alto flute, and bass flute to kind of simulate what it's like to play in an orchestra, but just with flutes. If you're lucky, you also have a contra flute. Google what that looks like. It looks really cool if you don't know already. And then you play. But oftentimes, the choirs themselves have these instruments, but the people who are playing on them, it could be their first time. And you don't know in a flute choir sometimes if you're getting advanced people or you're getting little baby beginners. So this was like, I could see... I imagine her taking, okay, you got a new person, just being like, okay, here are some exercises. Here's a good way to break it down and cover some of the areas that have issues with the alto. And it's applicable if you're a beginner or if you're an advanced player. Because beginners will not be scared away, as maybe they would have been by our last method we did. Mr. Beaumadier.
This is not for novice beginners.
I know. This one is definitely approachable. It looks friendly on the page as well because there's a lack of words on the pages. But yeah, I have to say, so I like that it's kind of built for anybody who wants to play the alto flute. I, like you, have the same sort of feedback that I would have appreciated if her instructions were spread out across the pages of the book instead of being in the introduction in one large paragraph, and then we had to reference it. But to be honest, I just ignored it. I was very bad this week. I was like, okay, and then I just played through it because, I was like, okay, 4 pages, I'll just play through all of them.
I'll just do all of them.
I'll just play through all of them, and then it's done. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Maddox, but I really enjoyed them too. So I would say that this book is very good for definitely flute choir aimed people, any beginners on the flute too, and if you're just looking to have a little bit of fun on the alto flute and kind of dip your toes in, because you've got the bass flute too, because this method is also for bass flute.
Yeah, we didn't get to try it out on bass flutes. Yeah.
We didn't do bass flute for this episode, but if you have a bass flute, you can also use this book for bass flute. And I liked how much high octave that she put in there too, and kind of as you mentioned, Jen, the octave jumping between middle and high, low and middle. And I have to say, at the end of these 2 weeks, my upper register was also in tune, very similar to how the piccolo book was. Ooh, so I have to say,
well done.
Good also for teachers. I would recommend this book for teachers because she has all the excerpts in there that your students request a lot of the time. So you're like, okay, I need you to practice jumping between the middle and the upper register, but not too crazy high. Okay, here's Habanera from Carmen. Yeah. So that's my verdict.
Very cool.
Well, with that, I think we're done for this week, Jen.
We are done for this week. On to the next.
I know. Listeners, please stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be hefty.
What have we done?
I know. I don't know what we've done. It'll be really good. Let us know what you think. What are we playing next? What's another auxiliary instrument book that maybe tilts the scales? You can write to us at thepracticeodyssey@gmail.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube by searching the Practice Odyssey podcast. We are on there. We thank you to all of our subscribers already and all of our listeners. You can find this podcast in all of the normal places. You can even tell Siri or Alexa to play us, and it'll work. If you do, tag me on Instagram, which is the handle Flute Yogini, all one word. The music in this episode was written by me, Alessandra Woods.
Yeah.
And the show art is from the amazing, fabulous Ivan Potter-Smith. Anyways, thank you as ever, listeners, for listening to us this week, and we'll see you again in a fortnight. Until then, have a great day. Take care.
Bye.